We turn our attention now to the Middle East, where a general strike is taking place in Israel after protest over what is seen as the government's failure to secure the release of hostages held by Hamas. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis took to the streets to demand a ceasefire. This is believed to be the largest demonstration since the start of the war 11 months ago. Businesses, schools and transport across Israel are being affected by the general strike. We'll have more in this report.
Tens of thousands of Israelis have hit the streets, calling for a ceasefire deal. Israel's main labor union called for a strike after 6 more captives were found dead in Gaza. This comes after Israel Defense Force spokesman Daniel Hagari said in a press briefing on Sunday that its forces on Saturday recovered the bodies of 6 hostages in an underground tunnel in the Rafah area, southern Gaza. Scuffles between the protesters and security forces were reported on Sunday night in one of the largest anti-government demonstrations in Israel since the Gaza war began nearly 11 months ago. The protesters chanted and demanded that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reach a ceasefire with the Palestinian group Hamas to bring the remaining captives home. Many Israelis blocked roads in Tel Aviv and demonstrated outside Netanyahu's office in West Jerusalem. Holding up banners and photos of hostages and chanting slogans, the protesters in front of the Israeli parliament building in West Jerusalem asked the Israeli government to take action and reach agreements with Hamas. This comes as the latest round of ceasefire negotiations in the Gaza Strip, which resumed in mid-August, once again reached a deadlock. Many protesters believe these are intentional obstructions by certain people, including Israel Prime Minister, who are preventing the conclusion of a ceasefire agreement. Despite the uncertainties, protesters still hope there will be progress in the ceasefire negotiations. In another development, a polio vaccination campaign kicks off in the Gaza Strip on Sunday, as over 2 million people in the Palestinian enclave are still grappling with a severe humanitarian crisis due to the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. The campaign started in central Gaza. The second phase is scheduled for September 5th in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, with northern Gaza set to be covered on September 9. The Palestinian Health Ministry, in collaboration with the World Health Organization, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine, Refugees in the Near East, and the United Nations Children's Fund, has established vaccination centers and hospitals, clinics, schools and shelters. The United Nations says it delivered 1.2 million doses of the oral polio vaccine, targeting approximately 640,000 children. Each child from birth to 10 years old is to receive 2 doses. Fixed vaccination sites will operate constantly, while mobile ones will be set up based on the population density of specific areas. Hamas has agreed to pause Gaza fighting for the vaccination to take place. However, Israel has refused to implement a complete ceasefire, confirming only a humanitarian corridor for vaccination personnel and designated safe areas for vaccine administration during certain hours. Reports say Israel continued its airstrike on Gaza on Sunday, as some residents in Gaza did not dare to go to the vaccination sites until they were safe.
You're watching the What Now? Let's take a break and return with more stories. Stay with us.
As Ondo and Edo decide. Follow the votes, updates and results. Our team of correspondents are spread across the states with live updates and analyses as results are declared. Stay with our round-the-clock coverage, only on TVC News.
Thanks for staying with us. And talking Russia-Ukraine war now, a Russian air attack has bombarded Kyiv in the latest attack on the Ukrainian capital. The city's military administration revealed that Ukraine's air defense units destroyed dozens of cruise and ballistic missiles earlier today. There is more in this report.
Russia struck Ukraine's capital of Kyiv with missiles early on Monday, while falling debris from the downed weapons injured at least 2 people, sparking fires and damaging homes and infrastructure. Reports say that Ukraine's air defense units destroyed more than 10 cruise missiles and nearly 10 ballistic missiles. Air raid alerts went out across Ukraine for nearly 2 hours before the Air Force declared the skies clear. Similarly, a series of explosions rang out in Kharkiv after the air alert. Reports say the Russian hit the city nearly 10 times. 41 persons were injured, including 5 children. There have been 10 ballistic missile attacks, without a single military target in the vicinity. A shopping center, a sports palace, residential buildings, a post office and private cars were destroyed. Meanwhile, authorities in the Russian region of Belgorod said a Ukrainian attack destroyed a childcare facility as the warring pair continued to swap airstrikes. Ukrainian forces say that they destroyed 22 out of 35 missiles and 20 out of 23 attack drones over some regions. Despite Kyiv's defensive action, the attack on the city produced a series of explosions, forcing residents into bomb shelters. Kyiv mayor said emergency services were called to 2 districts. 1 person was reportedly injured by falling debris.
We're staying in Europe, where a far-right party has won a state election for the first time in the post-World War II Germany, in the country's east, and looks set to finish a very close second in another. Germany's anti-immigration Alternative for Germany is celebrating a historic success with a big victory for the far-right party in the eastern state of Thuringia. The far-right Alternative for Germany, or AFD, won 32.8% of the vote in Thuringia, well ahead of the center-right Christian Democratic Union, the main national opposition party, with 23.6% in Sunday's regional elections. The far-right party is almost certain to be excluded from power by cooperation between rival parties. Meanwhile, the poor showing by parties from the center-left coalition led by Chancellor Olaf Scholz is likely to increase tension within the government. Chancellor Olaf Scholz said the results were bitter and called on other mainstream parties to form state governments without the far-right. I have joining me on the news journalist Francis Hughes. He joins me to discuss the far-right state win. Good to have you join us.
Yeah.
What likely impact will this have on an already fractious ruling coalition?
That's a very good question. I think what we really should be trying to understand is why people in Germany are voting for far-right neo-Nazi, neo-fascist parties. And what we're witnessing across Europe, which includes France and includes the recent race riots in Britain, where the Reform Party, who would be seen to be the far right in Britain, received over 4 million votes. What we're facing here is the failure of the elite. We're witnessing the failure of neoliberal austerity policies. When Margaret Thatcher came to power in Britain in 1979 and Ronald Reagan came to power in America, they introduced neoliberal austerity. So what they did was they privatised all the national companies and all the utilities. So in effect, money that was being made for the public purse to be put into public services was privatised, and all the tax revenue and profit was taken away from the services that people need in education, in health and in social services. So what we have is a failure of the political elite, the centrists, and the economic fallout from that is being felt by the working class and the middle class across Europe. They are now looking for an alternative to the neoliberal austerity that has been fostered upon European, British and American society for nearly 40 years. And the people who are offering a alternative to neoliberal austerity is the far right. So because of the economic inequalities which have grown under this neoliberal austerity programs, people are now seeking an alternative, and the far right appear to be that alternative. So people are voting for them because the trust in politicians is disappearing. The trust in the institutions.
Interesting you mentioned that, because there is indeed a rise in anti-establishment parties in Europe. And with that in mind and the explanation you just gave, what sort of pressure will that now put on Chancellor Olaf Scholz? And when you also consider that it's just 1 year before the national election?
Well, what will happen is we're witnessing the rise of populism. So in elections across Europe, and as we're witnessing in Germany at the moment, what you will have is a fracturing of the centre, a further marginalisation of the left, and the people who step forward saying the immigrants are the problem, they will change the immigration status of the people who are arriving. They are using distraction to cover up the economic woes that are visited upon society by the established parties that are in power. So I see a further weakening of the centrist neoliberal policies of the Social Democrats, of the Green Party, and anyone who is seen to be part of that failed established order. So you will find across Europe and in Britain, and potentially with Trump in America, more and more voters moving to the right, because they are offering an alternative vision of how the economy and how society can run. Their vision is wrong. They are blaming immigrants for the failure of the economic policies of the people in power, when what we are actually witnessing is money going from the working class and the middle class to the elite and the corporations, to the profiteers who are making huge profits through gas, through oil, through electricity, through telecoms, and through food in the supermarkets. And landlords are pushing rents up to points that are practically unaffordable for young families. So we have a failure of the established order, which is going to be replaced by those on the right who claim they can fix the economy, when what they will actually do is create more authoritarianism and blame immigrants and migrants and refugees for the problems of the economy, which are caused by the government and by the corporations.
And it is not just Germany that is saying, it's German government rather that is witnessing a faltering authority. In Europe as well, France is still struggling to form a government, and that's after snap elections since June, and July. But talk to us about how, these are the two most powerful countries in Europe. Talk to us about how this will affect the European Union and Europe as a whole.
Well, Germany was always the economic powerhouse of Europe. Now, because of what's happened with the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, and the gas pipeline that was destroyed potentially by the Americans, the Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2 gas supplies, this has pushed up the price of energy. It's pushed up the cost of production. It's pushed up the cost of food deliveries and food production. So these policies have created a pivotal point in society, where society is breaking down almost to a 50-50 of those in the centrist and those on the right. So potentially you're witnessing the slow demise of the European economy. You're witnessing, Britain's only growing by like 0.4%. America is struggling. The West in general is struggling to get out of the post-COVID, the post-2008 financial distress, and the fact that the economies are struggling, inflation is high, rents are high. We will just see an implosion potentially within society between those who are supporting neo-fascism and those who are supporting this neoliberal agenda. So you will just see more and more conflict within governmental structures, which will lead potentially to more violence, potentially on the streets, which no one wants to see.
Thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure to have you on, journalist Francis Hughes.
Thank you.
Well, let's turn attention to environmental matters now. A severe thunderstorm alert has been issued for Melbourne, with warnings of damaging winds, large hailstones and heavy rainfall that may lead to flash flooding. The alert was issued on Sunday, with the State Emergency Service warning people in affected areas to avoid driving and pull over away from trees, drains, low-lying areas and flood waters. The service noted that storms may also make trees unstable and make more likely to fall. And now to Paris, where the mayor, Anne Hidalgo, has stated that the Olympic rings will remain on the Eiffel Tower indefinitely. The giant Olympic rings, which were installed on the Eiffel Tower 50 days prior to the start of the Olympics, will remain mounted till further notice. The mayor stated that it was a beautiful idea to combine a French icon and the 5 interlaced rings, which represent the different continents, adding that she had secured the agreement of the International Olympic Committee. Reports say that the mayor has written to President Emmanuel Macron to notify him, as the Eiffel Tower is part of the French national cultural heritage. And finally, on World Now, a trained tiger handler has been hospitalized with injuries to her arm after being attacked by one of the